So two of my favorite items, the Samsung Fold5 phone and my motorcycle, the Yamaha MT-07, do not work with each other. What do I mean by that? And did I find a solution? I talked to a couple of people and some of you have recommended using a tote bag. I have been reviewing tote bags in the past, but not that many because I don't like the one-sided weight distribution of a tote bag. But I thought I'd give it a try because so many people have recommended using a tote bag. This is one from Alpaka gear and I'm really looking forward to test this out. Construction is great, organization is great, but as I said, tote bags kind of tend to give me this one-sided weight distribution, but I understand that many of the people that recommended tote bags to me said it's a great bag if you are commuting by car. And speaking of vehicles with wheels, let's go to the main topic of this video. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see my review of this Alpaka gear tote bag in the future. You know this kind of boomer sentence when people say, back then everything was much better, or you have this craving for nostalgia? I kind of get now what it's meant by that. It's not in a way that everything is bad nowadays or everything was better back then, but rather that I kind of wish for those times being a kid or being in my 20s where I did not have that many responsibilities like what I'm doing now. I'm going to clean my windows. Once a year I have to clean my windows, or at least I want to. No, I don't want to. But yeah, responsibilities, right? It's not that I think that everything has been better back then. Definitely not. There were a lot of issues in the 80s or in the 90s. But on the other hand, it's not everything great now, right? So it's not that I want to be back in the 80s or that I'm saying everything was better back then. But I think when I say something like, oh, I love the 80s, or I kind of have this feeling of nostalgia, it's all about me wanting to be in a time where I did not have that many responsibilities. I did not have to worry about my health. I could do more or less limited to money, which is now also an issue basically, but that was more or less the only limit that I had. Now I have responsibilities, I have to pay bills, I have to clean windows, as I said. So yeah, I think when people say, or at least when I say, oh, kind of wish myself back to the good old days in air quotes, in essence what I'm saying is everything is great. Times aren't easy nowadays and we shouldn't complain too much and we should not say everything was better back then. It wasn't. But I can kind of relate to anyone who's wanting to go back in time because times back then were easier, not because the times were easier, but because we were younger and therefore did not have to worry about too many things like we have to do now once we have become adults, right? So bottom line, I think it is totally okay to sometimes wish for those old times and kind of have those nostalgia moments, but in essence, everything's good, right? We should not complain too much. Alright, what was my issue with the Fold5 and my motorcycle? So if you have seen some of my EDC videos, you might remember that my current daily driver phone is the Samsung Fold5, and I love this phone a lot because this phone has replaced my laptop basically. When I'm on the go, this is amazing to answer emails. When I'm at a client where I usually work on their computers, on their workstations, I don't need my own laptop. So I just bring my Samsung Fold5 to answer emails, to browse the web, or maybe to watch some YouTube videos, but also obviously to stay in touch with regular phone tasks basically. This is a very expensive phone, but it's not that many people call it very expensive, but compared to an iPhone Pro Max, it's basically almost in the same ballpark. But it is because it has a mechanism where you fold it up. It has, let's say, delicate area where you need to kind of take care of it, and it is obviously a little bit more fragile than a regular phone. On my motorcycle, I have the Quicklook. You can see that review in the info tab above. No, up here, up here, I think. In the info tab above, my review about that phone mount for my motorcycle. And when I had my Samsung S21 Plus, which is a regular slab phone, you get a case and then you can mount it on your motorcycle. But when you're riding your motorcycle, you obviously have debris, insects like hitting the motorcycle, hitting your face or your helmet, but also hitting your phone. And the Fold 5 has this hinge where you really do not want to get any debris inside. So I don't want to put this phone on my motorcycle when I'm riding around. So I was looking for a solution how to see my navigation, see who is calling me. Obviously, I have the headset. I used a Cardo system, the Freecom 4 Plus, also review in the info tab above. So I can take phone calls while I'm riding, but I get a lot of spam calls sometimes. So I really want to see who's calling me. So I wanted to have a display on my motorcycle. Enter the Chigee, I hope I pronounce it correctly, it's Chigee, Chigee AIO5 Play. Before I go into this video, let me tell you that I got the device for free. However, please keep in mind I have a very strict ethics statement that I also always send over to any brand before they send me any product, which clearly states that this is an unbiased review. They have no say in whatever I'm telling you in this video. They do not see it in advance, and more importantly, that they are really aware of that I will nitpick at all of the negatives and all of the flaws of that specific product. More importantly, please also keep in mind, YouTube is my passion work, but I am a freelance film editor. So I edit videos, commercials for work. So making these videos involves a lot of work, and from my perspective, I invest much more time and much more work in making these videos, that the time and the work that I spent in this is exceeding the value of the product that I receive. Therefore, I do not see any point in doing a biased review. So please be rest assured that this is an unbiased video review of that product, although I received it for free. With that out of the way, let's continue this video review. So let's go over the installation of the Chigee AIO5 Play. This is the newest version of them. They have a light version which has a camera and stuff like that, but I wanted something that I can attach via USB to my USB power outlet, because the other version you have to kind of route all of the cables to the battery, and honestly I didn't want to do that. So I was looking for a much simpler solution, and then they actually came out with a version that is being able to be powered via USB, and now I will try to attach it to the bike. So the most obvious place would probably here on the handlebar where my Quicklook is at the moment, but I don't want to have the display here. So I'm hoping that I am able to put it here right above the dash, so it would be centered in my view and not be kind of off-centered here on this thing. I always was okay with my phone being on the Quicklook here left to the dash, but I'm craving something a little bit more symmetric. So in the package there are a lot of items like cables, the USB cable. You have the option to route a cable to your battery, but as I said, I don't want to pull this cable through all of the body work, so I will use the USB cable. And then you have this little bracket to put on your handlebar, and I'm hoping that I can attach it easily in the way that I am planning to, meaning above the dashboard. So let's see. The permanent installation of the display should have been fairly easy. That being said, I own a Yamaha MT-07. The Yamaha MT-07, or at least the edition that I have, the 2017 edition, has fairly limited amount of space on the handlebar itself due to the dash being centered. So I was fiddling around a long time to put the monitor in the place that I wanted. Obviously, it would have been easy to put it next to the dashboard on the left, where currently my quad lock mount is still mounted to. I want to keep it in that place if maybe sometime in the future I could attach a phone on there, just to be safe. So attaching the monitor on this limited space was a little bit difficult. I had to remove the MTO7 dashboard and then I fiddled it underneath the dashboard because I really wanted the display to be more or less centered above the dashboard, just for looks and better visibility, having that screen in my peripherals. So that was very fiddly to attach to that placing. That being said, this is not a fault of Chigee. Obviously, if you have a bigger handlebar or a sports bike, there are other mounts available to mount it a little bit easier. It is not a fault of Chigee that I was having so much difficulties installing that. But now that I have installed it on the handlebar, in my humble opinion, perfect position for the MTO7. One negative, also due to the design of my MTO7, it is a little bit fiddly now to get to the keys, but it's not that big of a deal. I can still get to the keys with the display above my dashboard. For me, it was more important to have the dashboard right above my dashboard of the motorcycle, so I have everything in one line, looking straight, having in my peripherals. So now, what can I do with this display before I go into the positives and negatives about this? The display, on one hand, when it's in its, let's say, OEM normal mode, you can see your speed, which is only based on GPS. So from my experience with using this display, because it calculates your speed using its internal GPS, it is a little bit off to the speedometer of my MTO7. It shows up a little bit slower. Then it shows your bearings. It has a compass inside, and it obviously also shows the pressure of your tires if you have the pressure sensors. So those are the informations that you can see from the regular display. But the magic comes in the next display that you can get to when you click the little button on the bottom left or one of the 4 heart buttons on the top. Once you press that button, you can connect your phone with Android Auto, or I think on iPhone it's CarPlay. And it's basically the same mechanism or the same display like on your car. No, it sounds a little bit stupid. Obviously, if it's Android Auto or CarPlay, it is the same display like in your car. So what you can see is Google Maps, all of the Android Auto compatible apps. The connection is very stable, but there are times where my phone doesn't connect right away to Android Auto. Not sure if it's my phone or the device itself, but I can help it if I turn off my motorcycle and therefore cutting off power to the Chigee and then turning it on again. And then basically once I do that, it will connect right away to Android Auto. The connection is very stable, and more importantly, the display is very sensitive, not in a negative way, but in a positive way, to my touch with my motorcycle gloves. I always had the issue of my phone not registering the input of my fingers when I had my motorcycle gloves on. But the Chigee AIO5 Play has no issues with registering my touch even with my gloves on. That being said, even if my fingers do not register on the display, you have 4 buttons on the top. One button is to get to the OEM menu with the speed and the tire pressure. The second button is to get to your Android Auto or CarPlay. Then the next button is to turn off the display, to which I get in just a second. And the next one is to screen lock the display. At the time of recording, we almost have summer here in Hamburg, so I wasn't able to test it in rain, but according to Chigee, it is water resistant. But I can imagine that if there are water drops on the display, that you can get some wrong inputs. So having a screen lock button on there is very helpful. But additionally, I also got the small little remote, which I attached to the quad lock mount, because you are supposed to attach it to the clutch lever screw. But honestly, I didn't want to loosen that screw because I don't have a torque screw to properly tighten it again. So I attached my remote to the quad lock mount, which works out perfectly. One caveat to the little remote is you only have 3 buttons: left, right, and OK. So with Android Auto, in some instances you can only move it left and right, and it doesn't like circle around the display to cover all of the buttons that are actually shown on the display. So if it's in air quotes stuck on the bottom row with all of your apps and your notifications, then you can only move the cursor left and right on that row and then push OK. So that is something that I would have loved that could be improved in the future, that the button selector goes right around all of the pressable options on a display. Not sure if that's actually something that Chigee can implement or that is an issue with Android Auto. Now let's go into the negatives of this Chigee AIO5 Play. As I said, this device is supposedly, from the product page from Chigee, is rainproof. As I said, I wasn't able to test it yet, but from what I can see, it is fairly weatherproof. However, the USB power connection is obviously not. So there is a trade-off if you do not connect it to your motorcycle's battery, but you want to have the ease of use to connect it to a USB outlet. So I need to think of something to kind of protect the power outlet. In this case, I was thinking of maybe cutting up a rubberized glove and then putting it on there. Maybe you have an idea how I can protect my power outlet or my USB power outlet when the Chigee AIO5 Play is connected to that outlet. But that is definitely a trade-off of the simplicity of this device. Next up is, this is Android Auto. On one side, it has a very convenient system. However, Android Auto, and I assume CarPlay as well, are limited to the apps that you can display. This is not an issue with Chigee, but obviously it's a safety feature actually. Android and also Apple probably do not want you to get distracted while you're riding or while you're driving a car. Therefore, they will, as far as I understand, limit the apps that you can display on Android Auto. But I'm using the app Kalimoto for riding motorcycle. That is a map system where you can kind of plan a round trip with a lot of curves and a lot of sightseeing for your ride. That app is unfortunately not available on Android Auto. Again, this is not a flaw of the device itself, but more in terms of Android Auto allowing you to use specific apps. And I understand that it is a safety feature and that it is up to the developers of the apps to kind of talk to Android Auto to be able to be displayed on Android Auto. With that in mind, this device only allows you to use a specific amount of apps while you're riding a motorcycle. And while I understand that only specific apps are allowed, I just wanted to mention, if you were thinking about using other motorcycle related apps with Android Auto, then you need to kind of do your research if that app actually works with that. And from what I was able to see at the moment, there aren't any motorcycle apps compatible with Android Auto, which probably is obvious at the moment, but considering those are all map-based apps, I would hope that in the future they would allow Android Auto compatibility. Not an issue of Chigee, but more an issue of Android Auto and the specific apps. Now, the downside or the flaw that I can see at the moment, having used this for a couple of weeks and many kilometers, is that while I really like to have my map right in front of me, I did notice I get distracted much more easier than when I had my phone on my motorcycle handlebar. I'm not sure why that is, to be quite honest. I speculate it is due to the size of the display, but more importantly, and that this is a positive, how beautiful it looks. It is actually a very detailed screen with very good visibility, with very good colors, and it looks really good. And I assume that that is the case why I sometimes get a little bit distracted and look at the display more often than I used to look at my phone. So that is definitely something that I was very aware of, that I was riding and I was looking down at the screen, although I didn't need to. I knew where I was going, but I just looked there. I'm not sure if it's also an issue of it being so beautiful and so very detailed. Although I have used it a lot, it's still new, right? So I'm not sure if that urge to look at the display will go away after a couple of more weeks. But right now I noticed, oh, you're looking at the display, you're not looking at the road. And that was a little bit scary, to be quite honest. So I really like that there is a button to turn off the display if you do not need it, and I would actually recommend to maybe turn it off from time to time to not get distracted. Maybe if you know you're getting to a place where you really need to concentrate on the road because there are a lot of twisties, I would just turn it off, or go to the main display where only your speedometer, your tire pressures and your bearings are shown. I noticed that is not distracting me that much, but once Android Auto is on, I unfortunately noticed I was distracted much more than usually. So that is a negative, or something that you need to be aware of. The next thing is, although it is very securely permanently attached to the motorcycle, it is a very beautiful device and people will notice it. A friend of mine thought that is a beautiful device on there. I would be scared that someone steals it or picks it off. It has supposedly some specialized screws on there, in air quotes, because as far as I can tell, those are just slightly different than Torx screws. So yeah, I would assume thieves don't carry around Torx screws, but still, if you have a Torx screwdriver, you could get that device off your motorcycle. That is definitely a negative that I think is a risk you kind of need to be aware of. It's not a foolproof thief protection, so to say. Alright, to summarize the negatives, the installation was a little bit fiddly, but it is due to my MT-07 or the limited space on the handlebar of the MT-07. So not necessarily something that is a negative of the device, but still something you should need to keep in mind to kind of think about where do you want to attach it to your handlebar. Next up, something that is not a negative, but to keep in mind, the AIO5 Play Edition has USB power outlet, so be aware of potentially needing to kind of secure, weatherproof that power outlet if that is connected to the device. Third, the display is very beautiful but distracting. Also something, not necessarily a flaw, but something to just keep in your head if you want to install it on your handlebar. Next one, and that is very important, this only supports Android Auto or CarPlay and not screen mirroring. So some of the apps that you maybe want to use, if they're not compatible with Android Auto, you won't be able to display them on the AIO5 Play. But again, a limitation of Android Auto, not necessarily of the display itself. The thief protection are basically just Torx screws or some form of Torx screws. It is a deterrent, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but it's not totally foolproof. Last but not least, the connection to your phone can be a little bit spotty, but again, I can't confirm if it's my phone, if it's Android Auto, or if it's the device issue. But if you just turn it off and turn it on again, it will connect right away to your phone. Now, to the positives and to my final verdict. This display, as I already alluded to in the negatives, it is beautiful. The display is very bright. You can see everything very clearly, even when the sun is shining. But again, it will kind of distract you. Everything that is pretty will kind of distract you, unfortunately. But it is a positive that the display is so bright and so detailed and very visible and good to read. The capacitive functionality of the display is very good and very responsive, so you can easily navigate the display and push the buttons even with motorcycle gloves. Also, if it would rain or if you want to kind of protect the display from accidental inputs, you can screen lock it. And more importantly, if you don't want it to get distracted, you can push the button to turn off the display quickly. The ease of use is amazing due to Android Auto and the responsiveness of the display being pushed and the connection also being very stable to your phone. And more importantly, it is a device that will protect your phone from getting damaged by getting hit with debris from the streets, with getting hit from bugs. But more importantly, many people are a little bit hesitant to put their expensive phone on the handlebar due to the vibration of the engine. Systems like Quicklook have an anti-vibration dampener or system in them, so it is kind of like on this swivel mount and this rubberized mount where it kind of absorbs the vibrations of the engine and therefore protect your phone. You need to know that all of the new phones have so-called optical image stabilization, where the sensor of your camera inside your phone is kind of floating and absorbing the motions or the vibrations of your hand while you're taking a picture or filming your videos. Because that is a floating sensor inside, if you have a lot of vibrations in your handlebar that gets transferred to the phone, your phone or the sensor, the optical image stabilization, will vibrate constantly and will get damaged over time. The system on the Quicklook, where you have the anti-vibration, takes away a lot of that vibration. That being said, I can understand that many people are hesitant to put their expensive phones on their motorcycle handlebar in fear that that camera gets damaged. So this is a major plus for everyone who's scared or fears their expensive phone getting damaged. You have a display on your motorcycle and your expensive phone in the pockets of your motorcycle jacket, and you get still informed of your map and of your phone calls. So I think that is a huge positive for this device. So having a device like the Chigee AIO5 Play on your handlebar, not getting damaged by the vibrations because it's just display. It has a vibration dampening mount on that, so it is some extra protection, but there are not that many mechanical parts that could be affected by the vibration of your engine, so it is less likely to get damaged. I think that is a huge benefit and a huge reason why you might want to consider a display like that on your motorcycle handlebar. So long story short, this is probably already a very long video, and thank you so much for listening to me this long. As I said, I really like this device on my motorcycle. It is beautiful, it is very useful. Obviously, I would love to use the other apps on this device as well, but it is up to the developers of those apps to make those apps compatible with Android Auto, and I hope that will be possible in the future. But I really like this usability. It is very beautiful. Yes, it is a little bit distracting. I hope I will get used to it, to not get distracted by the display, but if not, I will just switch off the display whenever I get to twisty roads and I need to concentrate on the road. Bottom line, I can highly recommend the AIO5 Play Edition on your motorcycle, and if you don't want to deal with all of the cable routing to your bodywork, that device is amazing. If you consider buying one of these items, please consider using one of the affiliate links in the description below. With those you won't pay more, but you will support the channel with a small kickback of that sale. And if you have any more questions, comment below. And more importantly, what do you think about these kind of devices on your motorcycle? Is it too much? Do you like bare bones systems on your motorcycle? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and please feel free to subscribe to my channel and click that little bell icon so you won't miss the next videos. Also check out my Instagram, second channel and podcast at You Know The Boat. Stay safe and healthy everyone, and I'll see you in the next videos. Thank you very much.